Welcome back to Next Gen Investing. It's now time to talk Oklo here ahead of their quarterly numbers that are due out today after the closing bell. Oklo has been, a parabolic story, up 209% roughly on the year. Joining us, of course, is Marley Kayden in studio, host here for the Schwab Network, to discuss more about, the recent pullback, yes, but all things considered, this is a huge outperformer on the year as we go into this report. And in a very lucrative market, right? Right now, I know nuclear energy is seen as a way to fill the void that is going to be expected from the grid not being able to power AI. So the story really is then hugely important for names like Oklo to fill this, what is seen as pretty big need for energy.
And this is a very interesting earnings for us to talk about. They're expecting a loss of 11 cents. They don't have any revenue yet. So it is a different one for us to break down. It's not a traditional utility to talk about. It's not even a traditional startup in the way that we generally talk about startups. It's a bet on the AI race and powering needs that we can't meet energy-wise, on the resurgence of nuclear energy because of government backing and national security. So, it's sort of a convergence that we're looking at as opposed to a more normal stock story here. Like Jenny just mentioned, the Trump administration relaunched its nuclear power executive order. So that does open the door to what we're seeing, these micro reactors, the speeding up of permits, the streamlining of rules and regulations, and injecting momentum into that supply chain to meet some of those needs that aren't being met. But Oklo right now doesn't sell energy. It doesn't have any licenses to operate. It doesn't have cash flow, but it's capitalized at over $11 billion, and its price to book is nearly 40 times its average. So, the only data we can observe is expected revenue over the next 10 years, next 2 years, which is basically zero, and their burn rate is still super high. So, this is a really interesting company to talk about because it's conceptual almost in nature as opposed to a business itself. And I don't want to, liken it to stories that didn't end up well, but I've seen a lot of comparisons to Nikola, the hydrogen and EV-powered semi-trucks. They went bankrupt earlier this year. I've even seen some comparisons to Theranos. It's not to say it's not going to perform. It's just one of those things that sounds like an incredible idea if it can, in fact, execute in the way that it says that it can. Most analysts seem to believe that it can. They are pro Oklo. They believe that this has all the ingredients to be a disruptive technology, a government darling. But it's very hard to say. We can't assess this one in the same way we normally do.
Yeah, first off, I want to say Oklo so bad, but Oklo,
I know.
It's a cool idea, right? It's a recycled waste turned into nuclear power. This is like the ultimate clean energy bet, to your point. And if it plays out, obviously, even for those who are early adopters, and I would say like there's sort of these niche pockets of market participants. There's the gold bugs, there's the Bitcoiners, the crypto people, and then there's the nuclear power people. And they've all been right at times, they've all been wrong at times. And much like in the case of Bitcoin, like in hindsight, it makes some like, why didn't I just put $500 into this thing when it was $500 for a Bitcoin? It would be 120,000. But if you did that for every single idea that comes across your desk, the vast majority of them don't work out. And some of them work out first. You talked about a Theranos, you talked about some of these other ideas like Nikola, and then they don't in the end. And so, when do you get in, when do you get out? And they're pre-revenue, to your point. So it's still super, super speculative. A lot of this is going to be on the story they tell, the timetable, how much closer they are to actually debuting some of these things. But if they do work out, it does kind of almost in a way seem like a call option on the future, especially in the AI kind of boom and this, huge demand for this type of, clean energy. But again, if you did this for every single name, like, is that a winning proposition in the end? Like, how much do you have to offset if for all the ones that don't work out?
And I think Oklo is really interesting because unlike the other comparisons I made, which were just a couple that I happened to see mentioned a few times, this is coming with the backing of like the reshoring of energy and this drive for strategic autonomy and of course the AI boom. And we simply don't have the energy infrastructure to meet needs. There's a deficit, and so there's an energy hunger in the U.S., and this can meet those needs in a clean way, like you mentioned. So if they can execute, and more importantly, you mentioned the word timeline, on a timetable that makes sense in terms of profits, this will be a hugely profitable company, but they have not made a dollar yet. They do, however, have direct federal support from the government. I mean, they have a narrative signed by the Pentagon because they've now been contracted to build and operate that microreactor at Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska. So, I mean, it's not just government support driving toward nuclear energy. It's actual backing now by the Pentagon in support of their mission. So,
well, I'll throw two names here too, Palantir and Tesla. I think these are two names that 5-10 years ago you could put in this same camp of like, oh, are they going to? I think they both have. So there's plenty of examples of names that we talk about that have turned the corner. Now, I'm never going to say, Oklo won't. And they have those runway, these ties to the DOD and things. But it just seems like a long ways away. And how much is already priced in?
That is
$11
true.
billion?
That is true. I mean, right now, I think that's the fear, is that there's already this basically, like, we've priced this stock in as if they're already delivering energy solutions, which, as Marley put it out, they're not really there yet. And so that's, I think, where you say, not to say that it's a Theranos type product, but that's where you get the risk of being one of these companies that has like made these promises where they're not actually delivering yet, because that's a major concern.
And the analysts only go out to 27. So, I mean, that's the only data we really have to look at. They'll do projections within 2 years. They are not projected to be profitable in that time. So it's very hard then to assess. That doesn't mean they can't deliver a product in that time. It doesn't mean they won't be building. They just aren't expected to be making a dollar. So it's very interesting to look at a story like that